Your world, your challenges, your faith. When faith within engages the world without, there's power. It's living life from the inside out.
Parents are always on the lookout for teachable moments, those times when we can help children look into real-life situations and mine those situations for important lessons or deep truths. I'm Martha Manikas Foster, and today on Family Life's Inside Out, I'm talking about teachable moments around anger with Dr. Josh Straub. He and his wife, Christy Straub, are family and leadership coaches who head up the organization Famous at Home. Their newest children's book is titled, What Do I Do with Anger? Welcome, Josh, to Inside Out.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you.
I really appreciated your book, and I'm aware that at least part of what you and Christy focus on is helping others understand and manage emotions. Your 2021 children's book came out during the pandemic, was about worry, and this new one is about anger. So I'm wondering why these two emotions. Were you seeing a need? Was it particularly for these times? Do you think there's something that children and parents, too, need to understand about these particular emotions?
Yeah, so great question. So it was fascinating because what do I do with worry was really on the docket as our first one to do. We wrote another children's book called What Am I Feeling initially that released, and we wanted to follow up with individual emotions. And worry was one that came out during the pandemic, as you stated, because, we saw a lot of worry in the world, and we still see a lot of worry in the world. And even our own worry as parents and adults trickles down into our children. We see that through research. And I think anecdotally, I see it in my own life. When I'm worried, my kids worry. My wife, Christy, she's constantly, I think we're kind of pointing at each other, like if we're overreacting to something with fear in front of our kids, we're kind of like, hey, maybe we need to talk about that away from our kids.
Right.
Because our kids pick that up. But we want our kids to understand worry. We want them to understand what they can do with that. And then anger came about, I think, because it was one of the most requested books that we had from parents. And I think that's because it's the one emotion that we all see initially. Anger comes out. It's a secondary emotion, but what it's doing is it's protecting. I think it's our God-given emotion to help us protect us from something that could potentially harm us. And so whether that's a person, whether that's a situation, but we get angry. And so parents see that. And a lot of times, I think we as parents tend to take it personally sometimes. Like we don't want to raise angry children.
Right.
But anger is a natural God-given response to something in the world around us. And I think it's really important that we as parents don't take it personally, but teach our kids to navigate it well.
I'm just going to take a moment here to reset for those who are listening. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Inside Out on Family Life. I'm talking today with speaker, author, and leadership coach, Dr. Josh Straub. The newest children's book from the Josh and Christy Straub collaboration is What Do I Do with Anger? Now, Josh, in this book, a soccer coach helps our main character, Alex, with his anger, and the coach's immediate lesson is for Alex to let out the anger in a constructive way. In this case, it's the soccer equivalent to running a few laps. And then later, Alex gets angry again, and the coach moves on to a second lesson, and that's to listen. What would you say to children and to all of us that we're supposed to be listening to or listening for when we're angry?
Yeah, great question. The phrase that we use in the book is, anger can show you what's deep in your heart. Naming that feeling can bring a fresh start. And so often in life, we get angry, but as I said earlier, it's what's driving the bus. And if you think about a chair behind, what's in the seat behind of driving the bus is another emotion. And so in the book, Alex was feeling angry because he wasn't being passed the ball. So he was feeling rejected. He was feeling left out because they weren't passing him the ball. Later on, he gets really angry with himself because he misses the winning goal, giving a little bit of the book away. And he has to go off and constructively get rid of that anger. But also he comes back and he tells coach and he tells the team, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed that I didn't score. And so often our ability to be able to sit back and listen, James chapter 1 says to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And then in verse 20 it says, because human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. And I think it's so important for us not just to look at that verse to go, hey, we have to listen to others, but we also have to listen to what's going on with ourselves. We have to listen to what's going on in around us, with the people around us. Are people safe? Sometimes our anger is because maybe someone made fun of us or someone hurt our feelings, and we're like, is that person safe? Is the situation safe? And so anger can teach us a lot. Our feelings can teach us a lot about situations, so we know how to set boundaries and enter into healthy relationships and then manage those relationships well.
Now, this book is going to be read by adults to children in some cases, right? And I'm just very aware that not every adult had a coach like the coach in this book. So children hearing this book and maybe reading it for themselves may be kind of at an advantage because they're learning this so early in life. What would you hope that adults reading the book to their children, and all of us listening to you and I talk right now, what would you hope that we might learn from naming our anger and looking for what's behind it, what's in the seat behind it, as you say?
Yeah. Great question. I think at the end of the day, what it leads to is it leads to a sense of us knowing ourselves well, and then number two, knowing others well. So as we listen to the deeper emotions that are going on within our heart, as we understand what's really going on in our world, what ends up happening is it not only leads to greater self-compassion, but it also leads to greater empathy for other people. Because now, if I'm feeling rejected, perhaps that rejection was a result of somebody else being hurt in a situation. And now, rather than taking it personally, I can learn how to step into their shoes because I'm now not the one who's offended. And so it really opens up the door for us to engage in healthy relationships, have self-compassion, and then ultimately lead to empathy with other people. A comment that you made earlier about anger being a secondary emotion, I don't know that all of us were taught that. So both as we look at our children and say, oh my, I don't want to have an angry child, or also when we hear other people being angry, knowing that there's something behind it, having this conversation right now could open up all kinds of doors of understanding. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's key is, one thing Christy would say, my wife, is she'd say, as a little girl, she's taught not to be angry. She was taught to kind of, make sure she didn't show that emotion. And so anytime our daughter would get angry, she felt this rise within her to parent her in a way to go, don't be angry, don't be angry. And she started paying attention to that to go, no, I really need to coach her to understand not that she can't be angry, but how to channel that in a healthy way so she can identify the deeper feelings going on within her heart. And I think for a lot of us, we have to pay attention to what we were taught about feelings and to sometimes in a lot of ways recorrect or maybe even reparent ourselves in terms of what we were taught growing up.
Right. And just the number of emotions that could be, or the situations that could be behind that anger are they're legion, right? It could be
endless.
Fear. It could be, rejection, embarrassment, any number of things.
Jealousy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Well, that's very insightful, both for the children we would be reading this book to and also to anyone listening to our conversation right now. So thank you, Josh. Thank you for joining me here to talk about it here on Inside Out.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you.
My guest has been Dr. Josh Straub. You can learn about Josh and Christy Straub's work and their books on their website, famousathome.com. That's all one word, famousathome.com. I'm Martha Manikas Foster with Inside Out on Family Life.